Well, I'll go ahead and start. I want to keep it kind of open and fluid because I want to make it useful. I have a few things to mention and just kind of to let you guys know if you didn't before, and then answer any questions. There is a sign-in over there, and afterwards, if you're, especially if you're brand new, let me know. I'd love to keep in contact with you. I have a kind of a book in progress that's a PDF really that I've sent out to new coaches that have been kind of like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I don't know how to do it. I can't really in 45 minutes now cover exactly everything you need to know about LD because it's a fluid monster, really. It changes, and at the end of the day, so to speak, it is two students in a room and a guy in the back they're trying to convince that they're right. And that's really it. And so, yes, there's time limits, and yes, there's kind of rules, but at the same time, it's all about convincing the guy in the back. Because of that, I debated back in the 80s, and it is a very different creature from what I did in the 80s. And even going to different tournaments, those of you who've gone to different tournaments, you could go to a tournament on one week, and LD debate looks like this. And then the next week you're at a different tournament and it looks totally different. So it varies a lot. There are some similarities obviously and stuff, but at the end of the day it's about a matter of kind of getting in and doing it. So I created kind of a slideshow just for me, just kind of my notes, but I wanted to let you know a little bit about the history first of LD in TAPPS. Several years ago, I was trying to convince a coach. Her team did public forum debate. It's not the same as CX, but it was a different style of debate. And I said, you guys are really good at public forum. Why aren't you doing TAPPS LD debate? And she said, because we do public forum. And I said, I think you guys would do very well in TAPPS LD. And she said, I don't understand why TAPPS didn't add public forum instead of LD. And I said, well, because we've been working on TAPPS LD since before public forum existed. It goes back a long way. We actually officially added LD debate in 2013. That was the first year, but before that we had unofficial tournaments that TAPPS promoted and helped along the way among TAPPS schools going all the way back to 2005 at least, and we even talked about it before that. My very first year coaching any kind of speech and debate was, well, technically I did that in 2000, and then we started a full-fledged forensics team, speech and debate team that traveled and did a lot of tournaments starting in 2003. And that year we were already talking about, hey, let's have a TAPPS tournament of some kind that is doing LD debate. We even, for several of those years before we became official, we had TAPPS LD at the same location as the state meet. Some of the kids still got awards. They were not the exact same as the awards, but TAPPS officially became an LD became an official TAPPS event in 2013, awarding points to the academic meet. So since then we've kind of kept it. The big thing for me that I really liked, I served as state director from 2013 through 2017. The last 2 years it's been Christy Wallace-Braley, who has been serving as state director. She couldn't be here today, and it's partly why I'm here. But the thing I've liked is that we've grown the program to where now we're competing in all 6 classifications. So when we first started, and even when it became official in 2013, we competed in divisions. And so at one point it was just 2 divisions, like big schools and small schools, and then it was, I think, 4 different divisions. Which was still like 1A and 2A were together, and maybe 3A and 4A were together. But the last 2 years we've had 6 classifications, and I think that's really good. And I think that's important because poetry is an event all by itself, in all of the classifications, and you are awarded points in poetry for all the classifications. And LD debate is that same way now too, and I want to make sure that we keep it that way. I don't want to be in the situation where the 1A and 2A schools are competing against each other, and in other words, and splitting those championship points, that makes sense. If you're the best debater in 1A, then you should get 10 points. right, for winning state. And if we go back to combining classifications into divisions, that won't happen. So I mention that because I really want you to make sure you have debaters, and I want you to make sure other schools have debaters so that we can keep those numbers up and keep going at the state meet. So that's kind of been my driving force for the last one. So how we want to review a little bit about how we have been doing things here at the state meet. Everything is still here. My understanding is that we are still planning on doing the same day, where it's the first day of the tournament. It's a Monday. We have run either 3 or 4 rounds of preliminaries, depending on how big the tournament is, how many debaters there are. If we have fewer than 12 debaters, we break the top 4 to semifinals. That only happened in 1A this year. We had, I think, 9 entries in 1A, and they went to semifinals. And then if there's 12 to 24 debaters, we break to quarterfinals, which would be your top 8. Last year we went to quarters in classes 2 through 4A after 3 rounds. So we did 3 prelim rounds for 2, 3, and 4A. Those numbers were, I think there were 13 in 2A and 3A, and then I can't remember how many 4A had, but it was a little more than that, but not a lot more. In 5 and 6A, we went to quarterfinals after 4 rounds. Both of those divisions had 20 or more debaters. I think there was a 20 and a 23, if I remember correctly. In 1A, as I mentioned, we went straight to semis. They had 9 debaters in 1A last year. Our unwritten rule in debate, as far as how we're going to conduct the state meet and how we break to the elimination rounds, is we really want debaters to have an opportunity, even if they hit that best debater in the first round, to break. In other words, if you lose 1 round, we still want you to be able to make the eliminations. That's our goal. So if you have 3 preliminary rounds, you're 2 and 1, you've won 2, you've lost 1, our hope is that you still have a chance to advance to the quarters. I can't guarantee that will happen. Sometimes it doesn't. I have been the odd man out before at this tournament. We had, it was back in the day, we had 4 preliminary rounds, and there were 9 students that were 3 and 1 or better, and my student was the 9th one, so it just happens. But that is always kind of our goal. That's why we had in 5 and 6A the 4 preliminary rounds, is we wanted to make sure, you know, if you have 20 kids, there's a good chance you're going to have a lot of them that are 2 and 1. And so let's give another round in there and divide those out into 2 and 2s and 3 and 1s. It's also important to note that all top 8 debaters earn points. If you've done this for a few years, or if you're brand new, you know, every point counts. We're trying to get state championships. We're trying to win as a team. I've been very fortunate at Holy Trinity. We've been 1st or 2nd as a team in the academic meet for 15 years, 16 years, somewhere in there, for a long time. But we, our goal is to get points. All top 8 debaters in each classification earn points. And that is, even in the 1A that had 9 debaters, the top 8 earned points, even though we only broke to semifinals. So places 5 through 8 were just awarded on how they did in the preliminary rounds and their speaker points. Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. So we had a little kind of hiccup with that year before last, where we broke to semis and points weren't awarded correctly, but we fixed that, and we're kind of emphasizing that just like every other event, if you're in pros and you place 8th, you're still getting a point. If you're in debate and you place 8th, you're getting a point. Now, if we break to quarterfinals, the loser of the quarterfinals, those 4 debaters are considered tied for 5th place. And so it works out to 2.5 points per. I emphasize that because if you're trying to convince your debaters to do this, and they're like, oh, I don't know, how am I contributing or whatever, if they break to an elimination round, they've earned points for your team, and they've actually placed at state. And that's, I'm a big believer in promoting their accomplishments. So that kid that has never done this before and somehow scrapes in to an elimination round and gets quarterfinals, I'm like, dude, you are 5th at state. That's awesome, you know. And you never know, you keep winning. So, all right, we do have a judge requirement. When you come to bring debaters to the state tournament, you need to bring a judge. If you have 1 or 2 debaters, then you need to bring 1 judge. If you have a 3rd debater, then you need to bring 2. Or there is a fee that you can pay, $150 for the missing judge. And that's steep, but it's steep because that's what we're going to pay somebody else to judge. We did have a good number of hired judges this last year. I thought it worked very well. We had a lot of people to choose from and a lot of experienced debate judges. That said, even if you have never done this before or you're like just getting into it, I would encourage you to judge because it's a great experience. It's the best way for you to learn as well as a coach. We would much rather have you as a judge than we would than the fee. I know we want to pay our judges, but at the same time, if we can have you judging in that spot, I'd rather take that than $150. We have had people every year come up and say, I really don't know what I'm doing. Please don't use me, but I'm on the list. And I will say, I'm going to do my best, but I will probably put you in a round, and it may be a round that frankly doesn't matter. If it's a 3rd round and it's an O2 person that gets an O2 person, your decision is not going to decide the state championship. It is not going to, yes, of course the student that wins is going to be happy and the one that loses is not going to be happy. That's true no matter where it is. But it's not going to ruin the tournament or anything. So we encourage you to jump in and judge anyway, even if you're uncomfortable with that. One other note on the judges, one of our requirements is that we also ask judges to be available 1 round past the elimination of your team. And that is simply, if every team that didn't advance to the quarterfinals got up and left, then we would not have enough judges to run the round. We always want to, once we get to the eliminations, to try to panel those, to have 3 judges looking at the debate rather than just 1. And we were able to do that this year, only because we had so many that stayed. We really appreciate you guys staying. If you did. If you didn't, stay this year. It'll be better. This goes back, it might have been 2 or 3 years ago. We were in a situation where we were very strapped for judges, and we had 1 judge for the semifinal rounds of a classification, and that is painful. If you get to the point where you are in the top 4 and you've got 1 person back there deciding, that's just, that's hard. I know that's happened the last couple of years in speech and in acting, and I know your duet actors are not happy when they come out and they're like, there was 1 judge back there and that judge happened to hate our piece. Well, it's the same thing in debate. We don't want to get in a situation where we've got 1 judge that is watching a semifinal or a final round. This year, again, we were very, very good on judges. We were flush. And even that requirement to stay 1 round past the elimination, most of the time, if you've been eliminated and you were like, can I go home? We did our best to make sure that you were able to. And I think we were able to make most people happy. If you were one of those that wasn't, then ignore that. All right. This will probably be redundant for some of you. I put how to do it. So what is this thing? Obviously, LD debate is a one-on-one debate. So it is literally your student against 1 other student. It is about 45 minutes long. Alternating speeches. The affirmative will speak first. The negative will ask questions. The negative will speak. The affirmative will ask questions. If you're not familiar with those terms, affirmative says, yes, the resolution is good. The negative says, no, the resolution is not good, and I disagree with that person. Ideally, the 2 debaters will argue against each other. They will not be, like we call ships passing in the night, where one is saying things, and then the other is saying things, and they never talk about what each other said. It happens, especially with novice debaters. At the end of the round, the judge is in the back. The judge does not, we prefer, especially at the state tournament, for there not to be what are called oral critiques. We don't really want the judge to say anything. I have, to me, it's a state meet, which means the time for coaching is past. The time for coaching was before this. If there is something that is really bad, then I think it's okay if the judge says it. But by that I mean, you might want to stand when you talk, Not, I disagree with that point, let me tell you how to, no, don't do that. You're just setting yourself up for an argument. You know, if a student is overly rude or something like that, you might want to address that with the coach or address it with the tab room. But other than that, I mean, usually it's a thank you guys, good job, good luck, keep working, you know, stick with it. If there's somebody who's brand new and it's clear that that person did not do well, offer some words of encouragement, because we don't want to chase people out of this event. So,
can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I've never done this before.
Yes, and I'm sorry if I'm like speaking somewhere.
No.
Yeah.
So I want, is the resolution the same the whole year?
No, it's not. Now for TAPPS, we only use one resolution because it is only at the state tournament.
Okay.
But there's two different types of tournaments. There is tournaments that are UIL. They'll use the UIL topic, and that's most of your public schools. And then there's also something called the Texas Forensic Association, which has TFA tournaments. That's TFA, Texas Forensic. They'll use the National Speech and Debate Association topic. So the UIL will have one topic in the fall and a topic in the spring. And the NSDA will have a topic every 2 months, in September, October, November, December, January, February.
And who is NSDA?
National Speech and Debate Association. We have at TAPPS, even though our tournament is in April, we have in the past used the National Speech and Debate Association January, February topic. So if you're looking for tournaments to prepare for this topic or get your guys some experience, you would probably want to look at some TFA tournaments in January and February, as well as some TAPPS prep tournaments.
So is TFA the same as NSDA?
No, but there's kind of an old relationship there. A long time ago, NSDA basically said we want each state to kind of have its own association as well, and so TFA came out of that. There were some events that the UIL didn't do that NSDA did, and you had to be you had to qualify in some way at your state to get to the NSDA level, and so the TFA.
TAPPS will most likely use the January, February topic.
Yes.
Of which organization?
NSDA. Yeah. There is also a UIL spring topic, so some tournaments will use that, and that'll help you. I mean, I like to take my guys to just about any tournament that has LD, regardless of the topic, because it's the experience of debating that'll get them in. I wouldn't focus just on tournaments that have that one topic. So we start the first thing on my list is get started early. We start in September, going to tournaments. We actually host a tournament for debate at my school the first weekend of September. That's not Labor Day.
When you host, how do you let other schools know what the topic is? Do you let them know in advance?
Yes. The topic is always given to you in advance.
Okay.
The topics that there's kind of a schedule of release by those associations. The UIL releases theirs for the fall in August, and I wish it could be specific, but it's kind of vague. Sometimes they say August 15th and it's not out yet. But sometime in August they'll release that topic. NSDA will release their topics on the first of the month prior to them being used. So the September-October topic will come out up to August 1. And then the January-February topic we'll learn about December 1st. TAPPS, in our bylaws, we officially say the TAPPS topic will be announced in the spring. And the reason for that is we want to look at the topic and make sure it's something that's accessible or something that is, debatable, for lack of a better term. Just in case an association puts out a topic that might challenge some morals or something like that, we would want to keep that in reserve to be able to make our own topic. I'll tell you, I've been doing this for, 16 or 17 years. I've never seen a topic that directly challenged my own morality to where I would say, oh my gosh, how are we going to avoid this? There have been a few topics where the issue of abortion may have come up, but we've always found a way to address that without having to take on a pro-abortion stance. For example, I'm in a Catholic school, so obviously we're opposed to. I should preface that, we're not going to be out there saying abortion's wonderful, right? We're not going to say that. But I've never had a topic that made us say that. Like, we're on this side, we're going to have to forfeit or something. So the topics are actually usually pretty good. I will also say every time a resolution comes out, I look at it and immediately I think that is one-sided. I can see that sign, and I don't know what the opposite is. Once you work with it enough, you can become well versed in it. So when I was debating in high school, I remember there was a resolution that I just firmly disagreed with. I was like, I just don't see this, at all. But I was actually better supporting that resolution than I was opposing it. So I was able to figure out what that argument was and make it, and I wound up being undefeated on that side. And the side I believed with, I was 50-50. So it's kind of weird. But we also, there is a practice tournaments. Joyoftournaments.com is a great site. That is the place where you'll find all of the information for various tournaments. In addition to, while we're talking about practice tournaments, I mentioned before that LD is a different monster at the different kinds of tournaments. If you've gone to these tournaments, you know that. If you go to a UIL tournament, it's going to have the UIL topic, and it is going to be a little more traditional than if you go to a TFA tournament. And by that I mean the debaters will typically speak a little slower. They will typically have more of a persuasive bent. They're trying to kind of persuade you more. They may use less evidence, and they may, little things like they'll start their speech perhaps with a quote. TFA tournaments are more progressive, as they're called. They tend to speak very fast. They tend to do things that I think are crazy. You mentioned CX debate. In TFA tournaments, LD in a lot of places looks like a one-man CX because they'll talk about things like plan and solvency and disads and everything. The funny thing is those are jargon words that really we've been doing a lot of in LD forever. Whenever you say, well, this is how I see us fixing it, you are presenting a plan and talking about solvency. It's just that the TFA, they're going to say plan, recited, solvency, blah, 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 and just kind of rattle stuff off. The TFA tournaments will have a lot more evidence typically, and will have a lot of just kind of reading the evidence as fast as they can and arguing a lot more about cards and stuff. If you watch some rounds online, I've seen some rounds that really just looked nothing like a debate. Debaters sitting in chairs, debaters not dressed up nicely. It's kind of crazy. It's like, what are you guys doing? It's frankly looking more like it does in the college level. There's a lot of college debates that have kind of run into that. It really depends on the judges. I have argued for years with some of my colleagues that if we had more lay people judging, people that didn't know debate coming in and judging, you would see a change. You would actually see people trying to be more persuasive and speaking more slowly. I would encourage you, whenever you're judging around, to be very direct. Don't just let them do whatever they want. Tell them in advance what you're looking for. If they ask for it or even if they don't. I will always ask the debaters when I start judging around, do y'all have any questions for me? And inevitably one of them will say, yes, what is your paradigm? What are you looking for? What do you like to see in the debate? Something like that. And I always tell them, I'm a traditional LD debate judge, I want you to slow down, all this stuff. Now I've been coaching for a long time, so they kind of pick up on that and they're going to talk fast anyway. But you can tell them up front. Like I would encourage you, I'm brand new at this, you better speak slow. You're still the judge, you're still in charge. And if they are talking so fast you can't understand them, you might even just put the pen down and kind of go like this. You don't want to stop them, you don't want to say anything, but you are telling them essentially, I'm not following you, and it's up to them to convince you. So they don't get to debate just the way they want to. Their job is to convince the judge, and so they need to be able to adapt. The TFA tournaments are typically judged by former debaters, by college students, by younger guys. So because of that, it has gotten into this thing where it is a lot of very fast talking. UIL tournaments, you'll still see a lot of parents coming in, you'll see a lot of teachers coming in, and so because of that, it is slowed down. A good debater is going to adapt. A good debater is going to see the judge in the back of the room, ask that question about the paradigm, and adjust. And if somebody says, I want you to speak slow, then you better.
By the spring semester, they start talking fast because they're getting ready for the competition.
Right, absolutely, yeah.
And you were told, you tell them to speak slow.
Yeah, and that's the thing is they need to enunciate. Somebody can speak quickly and still be clear, And that's fine. And I always tell, when I tell the debaters, I want you to speak slowly, I want you to speak clearly. I will tell them directly, speeding up at the end of a rebuttal because you're trying to get to those last few points is forgivable. I get it. I understand that. Speaking fast right out of the box and then, finishing with 2 minutes left on the clock, that is not forgivable. You have wasted your time and you've just spoken fast for no reason.
So I have more questions
No, that's fine.
That are related to the other side of speech. Are judges looking for dynamic speaking, or are they clearly judging based on the merit of the argument?
It really does depend on the judge. On the ballot, there are two decisions to make. The first is affirmative or negative, which side won. And for that, you're typically going to look at the arguments that were made, which were more convincing to you. You want to keep your own personal side out of that, right? I mean, you might have a great argument to destroy that other side, but did the debater debating him make it? And if the debater debating him did not make it, then you shouldn't consider that. The second decision you need to make is on speaker points. You will look at each debater and say, based on a scale, and there's a whole reason why the scale is like this, but the scale is 25 to 30, the typical scale now. Based on a scale of 25 to 30, how well did that person speak? A very good speaker would get a 30. A very poor speaker would get a 25. And again, it started a long time ago with a 1 to 15, I'm sure, and then there was a 15 to 25, and it's just kind of this morphed. And so now it is a 25 to 30 point scale. Kids want to come out and say that they got 90 speaker points, in 3 rounds. That would be awesome. But that is the place where you really go, you are a very dynamic speaker, and so you're getting the 30. And you are less so, and you're getting the 28. Typically, the better speaker is going to win. But it's not uncommon for the better speaker to not win. Several years ago, I saw a debate that was between a debater, a guy who'd been debating a long time, and an actor who was thrown into it. And she spoke great. She was very eloquent and very impassioned, and they gave her great speaker points. But her arguments were nothing. There was nothing behind it except just a lot of fluff. And he pointed that out, and he spoke well too, but she spoke better than he did. He won the debate, but she had more speaker points. So it's called a low point win, and it can happen. So I kind of think that a lot of judges, especially new ones out of college, I've seen this, like to do low point wins because it's their way of making sure that they both kind of won. A debater who is fresh out of high school and is now judging for the first year or so, I see a lot of low point wins coming from them. Because it's, some of these guys, they may have debated themselves, in the years before. And so they're like, oh, it was a low point win, so kind of their way of pleasing both sides. It doesn't quite work, I mean, the one that lost is still going to be upset, but it's their way. I really think it's important to do practice rounds. Oh, the other thing about the practice rounds I want to emphasize, there are a few TAPPS run tournaments, or tournaments that are run by TAPPS schools. So Holy Trinity in Temple, where I am, we have a tournament. We actually host 5 tournaments throughout the year because we're crazy. They're good experience for our kids, but they're also quite frankly good fundraisers. We make some money on each one, because we're charging entry fees and then we're paying out trophies. So I try to minimize how many judges we hire. We use parents, we use coaches and everything, and that helps fund our team. So that's the advantage. But in late March, we have a tournament that is specifically preparation for the TAPPS state meet. And so our debate topic that day will be the TAPPS debate topic. And the debaters will all be TAPPS debaters. It's open to public schools. Last year, I think we had 1 or 2 public schools that came to that tournament, but all the debaters were TAPPS debaters. So.
Are all of those TAPPS tournaments posted on the TAPPS website?
TAPPS does help us publish those, but it's also on Joy of Tournaments. I mean, everyone we host is.
I went to one in Kerrville.
Yes, and then that's the other one.
I went to that one.
Our Lady of the Hills in Kerrville has a tournament in late February, and I believe Jeannie's planning on doing that one again this year. So, and then there are some others. I know Stonegate and Irving has one. I don't think they've been doing debate, but they've got one that has some of the other events. So, to me, it's very important that you go to some practice tournaments because you don't want your debaters' first debates in competition to be at the state tournament. So I went back and did a little research, and we were very fortunate this year that my top 2 debaters wound up tied for first. They both won in the semifinals. My third debater went 1 and 2, and she did not advance. But on average, those 3 had done 19 LD debates before they started the state tournament. And surprise, surprise, the one that didn't break had the fewest. They had also done an average of 35 debates all told. So my top 2 also did public forum debate a lot during the year. They did several runs of that. That was just this year, too. So, I mean, Samuel is a rising senior now. He had also debated his freshman and sophomore years and did about the same number of events and tournaments those years. The more experience you get, the better it is. I think it is becoming more clear that a lot of the debaters at TAPPS State are debating during the year. We're seeing some more experience, but we still do have some brand newbies. Now, I still want you to bring the brand newbies if you, for some reason, they want to try it and they didn't get a chance, but it's going to benefit them if they get some of those practice rounds in during the year. If for some reason you can't make a tournament, you know, I mean, there are tournaments held every weekend throughout the year, except for there's one weekend in October when there's basically no tournaments because of the state speech committee or state speech convention. But every other time there's a tournament going on. If you can't make one of those, I would just contact another TAPPS school that you know is debating and saying, hey, let's get our guys together and can we practice debate against each other? Ideally, not in the same classification. That way you're not, you know, like showing them what you're going to be showing them in a couple of weeks.
And on joy of tournaments, like if your school's brand new to debate, they'll actually let you go in and watch rounds.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
And you just let them know it's like we're not competing, we're just here to watch.
So we can bring our students here?
Yes.
So for the TAPPS state meet,
Mm-hmm.
can we watch?
What we've done, so there's not supposed to be any audiences for the speech events. We've been given permission to have some of the elimination rounds have audiences for debate. But by that time, it's kind of almost too late. So, I mean, as far as, you know, getting debate started, I would make sure they see some rounds early in the year and have the experience of actually debating at the state meet. It's difficult. I have tried every year to do something in the spring with my team that kind of catapults them into the next year. But I've noticed that the summer is long, and it's long and short at the same time, right? And that what we've done in the spring really doesn't matter that much. I mean, it's getting them back in August and getting them started there that's really going to help. So if I have somebody watch at the state meet in April of one year, it's probably not going to convince them to do it the following year.
For like me,
Yeah.
this year we'll do speech again, but just
Okay.
not the debate part, just
Okay.
the speaking
Think
events.
about
Well, yes, I mean,
Yeah.
it'll be the year after that.
Sure, okay.
But in this year, in processing and taking in all this
Yeah.
information, I would like to go to some of those tournaments.
Oh, sure.
So that I could watch, but if I, as a potential coach, future coach,
Yeah.
could sit in on some at the state level,
Sure.
like here at TAPPS, I'm gonna be here anyway.
Right.
For the other stuff.
I'm sure we can get you in there. But like I said, I would still encourage you to see some rounds earlier and see if you've got some kids that want to give it a shot. Because we've had those. I believe, I don't want to speak exactly, so I won't mention the name, but there was a kid that made semifinals this past year. Last year he made quarterfinals, and that was his first tournament. I know that to be a fact. But I believe his coach had just said, hey, there's this LD debate thing, do you want to give it a try? And he said, sure. And he wound up making the quarterfinals. And, you know, again, he got his team 2.5 points. I actually saw him at a debate camp last summer that I coached at. And I mean, that kind of jump-started him, just the idea of, hey, there is this thing. If you've got a kid that's interested in politics, interested in current events, your current events guys, your persuasive speaking guys, talk to them. Because I would not be surprised to see 1 or 2 of them be interested in just giving it a shot. And if you can get them to a practice tournament, even to see what it's about earlier on, that would be good. Yeah, I've emailed, don't be afraid to email the coaches at those schools on Joy. Every time I'm going to a tournament that I haven't gone to before, I email the coach something. Like, even if it's just, hey, we're looking forward to seeing you guys this year, you know, anything we need to know. if I can't find where exactly, you know, if it's not clear on their website where, you know, which topic they're using, because all of the tournaments on Joy, those are pages created by the individual coaches, which means they look radically different. Some are great and some are frankly missing a lot of information. You know, email the coach, which topic are you using? Email the coach, hey, do you mind if I bring some kids to watch some rounds? We're brand new getting started. I would be shocked if any coach were to tell you no. So.
In UIL competitions, they'll allow you, you just ask,
Yep.
and they'll tell you, okay, as long as you get there before the participants.
Right, yeah, don't walk in the middle of a round, don't walk out in the middle of a round, you know, somebody's speaking, don't walk out and like make a video, you know, as long as you're there to watch and are keeping quiet. And then tell the debaters, you know, as well, as you're walking in, do you mind if my students are just getting started? We're hoping to watch you guys today.
My kids, or my students that did the CX, they love CX. They
Yeah.
don't want to go away from it. But when I told them, we only have LD, I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Is this your opportunity? It was okay. So because they hadn't done any LD at UIL, they sat in some of the competitions and they just saw, you know, how they did it. Then they studied the rules and everything, and then they competed here.
And former CXer can be a very good LDer because they've already got the research background, they've already got how to use evidence. The one thing that maybe they don't have is, okay, I'm by myself. And that can be intimidating, but I also tell my kids, you know, being by yourself is a great thing too. You take out that frustration of, we lost the round because of my partner, right? Or maybe you're the partner that lost the round, you know? I mean, if you're by yourself, you've got no one to blame, which is good, but you've also got no one to rely on, which is good in a different way, you know? So, yeah, and really, the first tournament that we host, I mentioned it, it's for debate. We do all kinds of stuff. We do public forum at that tournament. We do LD. We have a novice and a varsity. So if you're brand new, we've got you doing that. We encourage the novices to watch the first round of varsity. We have the varsity debaters judge the novices. And then we even do an hour and a half of extemporaneous debate, where one of the topics they get, and right then, and then 30 minutes later, they're debating it. An extemporaneous debate is a very short debate, about 16 minutes long. It's only done at our tournament and at the national tournament. And the reason we do it is because, well, it's beginning of September, and I just want you to have as much experience going in as possible. The more times you're getting up and speaking and arguing with somebody, the better prepped you'll be later on. So, okay, let's see. I have more stuff than I thought I was going to have. Let me make sure. I believe it was year before last. I can't remember when. I know there was a question about cell phones. So we have a no cell phone policy in TAPPS, pretty much throughout everything. The challenge is that for debate, we encourage the kids to time themselves. We don't have enough people to time, and we want the kids to be responsible for timing their own speeches. And you can go out and buy, as I have, you know, the little timers, and I encourage kids to use them. They're great. But everybody's got a stopwatch on their cell phone. And so I discussed with, I asked the question to Brian Bunselmeyer, and his response specifically was, what is the industry doing? What are they doing at tournaments? And I said, they're allowing them to use their cell phones in airplane mode. And he said, then we're going to do that. The idea was we're going to stick with best practices. So I mentioned this as kind of a segue into a larger thing, that the mentality from Brian and the mentality from the committee is we want to continue to evaluate what's going on in the industry or in the competition realm, and make sure that TAPPS is kind of in line as much as we can be with everything that is going on, if that makes sense. So for example, a long time ago, prep time for LD, that time between speeches when you're allowed to sit there and frantically jot down notes, went from 3 minutes to 4 minutes. That was actually before TAPPS started LD, so, or actually it was unofficial at the time, right? But we made that change as well. So I mean, we're kind of keeping up with the things that are going on.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
And it kind of needles me.
Yeah.
so they're up there and, I'm going to give you an off-the-road map.
Off-time
road map,
yeah.
and then you talk for 2 minutes.
Right.
Before, you know,
Right.
and I, told my kids, I said, when I'm judging around and somebody says that to me, I just look at them and go, you're on the clock.
Right. Yeah, I've done that too. Held it up, started.
Yeah, you're on the clock, because that's a real new sneaky way.
It is.
It's actually not new. I've been seeing it for about the last year, because I always have to judge every time I take kids to a
Yeah.
tournament. And I thought,
And
and they're
really,
talking 2 minutes. If they were gonna just get up and say,
yeah.
I'm going to run my case,
And
then I'm
his
running
case,
yours,
yeah.
or vice versa. But they're talking, 2 minutes on their off-the-clock roadmap.
Right, yeah, there are some practices that, and that kind of goes back to, there's some, and the funny thing is there are practices that are going on in the room that are not really approved of outside the room.
Right.
So, when I mentioned the cell phone, I mean, that's the tournament director and the administrators and everybody saying, yes, that's perfectly
Right,
acceptable.
right.
And when that clock starts, that's really gotta be the person in the back holding the debaters accountable.
Right.
That is part of my paradigm as well, is I'll tell the debaters flat out, your roadmap should be very quick. Roadmap is what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
And in LD, my theory is your roadmap should be, I'm gonna talk about his case and then my case. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
That's telling me the order, because I've got my notes, my flow, I've got my affirmative on one page and my negative on the other. So you're telling me after the neg, great, I know which page to start on. That's all I need. Those roadmaps that go on forever, frankly, are something out of the more progressive side, the more CXy side, because the CX debater is going to get up and say, I'm going to run 2 topicalities, topicality on significant, topicality on harms, or on something else, and then I'm going to run a disad, then I'm going to go on case. Yeah, all of that. That's the very progressive CXy kind of roadmap, and that's certainly something that is really kind of abusive. And frankly, I don't think it's good if you're a debater and you're doing that again, because the object is to convince the person in the back of the room. And if the person in the back of the room is going, I don't like what you're doing because this is too long and you should have started the clock.
You're sneaking.
You're not earning points there. You're really kind of ruining it. Something that is, I don't know, I don't suspect this is coming to TAPPS anytime soon, but I did want to let you know what's happening in some of the other places. TFA is allowing the internet. NSDA, in their spring minutes, said they're going to be piloting internet usage rules. I can't remember if it's next year or the year after, but the use of the internet in round is coming in those realms. Now we have only been with computers in TAPPS for a couple of years, so I don't suspect that'll come anytime soon. But it's probably going to be a topic of discussion at some point in the future. I'm kind of curious to know what you guys think about that, as far as like internet in the round or not.
We went to Hockaday this year,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a bloodbath, but
Yes.
but we go because our head of school graduated from Hockaday.
Nice.
But, and the kids know they're going to get eaten alive, but it's a good experience. Everybody's very professional, and they started the thing with the cell phones where instead of just posting everything, it was all on their cell phones.
Right.
But then my phone was going off 24/7 because I had like, I don't know, 8 kids there maybe.
Right.
And so every time, they advanced or every time they went anywhere, and then my phone was dinging and it told me what room they were going to, and
Right.
and the kids kind of enjoyed that. This only tournament where I saw that, but
Yeah, that's
I
they're
think
using
that's
tab room.
yes,
Tab room,
yes. I think that's kind of the new.
That's definitely the
We
new
only
thing.
hit it
Yeah.
at Hockaday, and we only went to 4 tournaments.
Well, and this is even, what I'm talking about is even students using it.
Right.
Students actually would have their computers there and be able to look up something. Or, like I saw it at the last TFA tournament we went to this year, they email each other their arguments in their case.
Yeah, we've
So.
hit that too.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan.
Me neither.
I was discussing it. We're a debate family, so I've had 2 graduate, both of them, one state in LD, and then my junior is about to be a senior. He's also one state in LD, so it's a very boring house. We sit around and discuss such things. So we were discussing whether or not the use of the internet would cut down on the speed of the speakers. Because a lot of these guys speak a lot because they buy packets of information, packets of evidence. There's companies out there that will sell you all the briefs, all the cases, but they're not cut for time. So, you know, a long time ago I saw this video about oratory, and it said a good speaking rate is 100 to 120 words a minute. So in an oratory, you're talking only about a 4-page double-spaced speech, right? Well, these cases are 10, 12 pages long, not double-spaced, and these kids will just rattle it off as fast as they can until they run out of breath or die. And if the internet comes and people stop buying those packets, would it make people swing back to speaking more persuasively? I'm frankly not sure.
Then they have to look it up.
But then, that's the thing, is they'd have to look it up. So I mean, your prep time would be frantic.
Yeah.
You know. So I don't know. I will tell you that the big problem that I see with it is very practical, and that is, how do you ensure that students have access to the internet? I mean, not everybody has a hotspot. Not everybody. I mean, this room is, I think, surrounded by cinder blocks. I'm not sure you're going to get it in 104, and you might get it in 109, and that's not really fair.
You may get it in one part of the room and then the other part of the room. So
Right.
one team has it, one team doesn't.
So it's really kind of tricky. I will tell you that the only that round that I saw, I did not get the impression that the students were looking up things. I really got the impression that they simply emailed the evidence, because that's the common thing in TFA now is show me what you're about to say.
How do you feel about that?
I hate it.
I
I want
do
them
too.
to listen and take
To
notes.
me, yeah. So I tell my kids no. I said, tell
Yeah.
them no. Because the whole point of a debate is to listen to what the other guy says
Right.
and debate him.
I
If you've
think-
got their whole case in front of you,
There's definitely a time to look at the evidence, and that
Yeah.
is, you told me something, and I'm not sure that's correct.
Right.
Let me see it. Did you take it out of context? What else is in that argument?
Right.
You know, I think that's appropriate.
right, I agree.
But if you're just saying, let me see everything, I'm going to look at this and not listen to you, I really don't like it. And I'll be honest, at TAPPS, we see that in some spots. I mean, TAPPS is a conglomeration of schools of all different levels. So we do primarily UIL, we're very traditional in the way we debate. The 6A schools, there's some 6A schools that are very TFA, there's some 1A schools that go to a lot of TFA tournaments. And then there's some schools that are like, we don't know what those letters mean, we just started, and they're all together. It's very important that you adapt, because you might have that 6A judge that is used to everything, or you might have the coach who's doing it for the very first time, or the parent for the very first time. And so TAPPS has still been very traditional in the way its debate has gone. Like I said, with some pockets, and I think everybody's doing a pretty good job adapting to their opponent as well as to the judge.
So in TAPPS, do they ask to see your notes? To email notes?
No, we have not to
Here,
email, because the internet's
we're trying
not.
to cross it when we go to the TFA ones.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what we try and do is we go to out of town where we're dealing with hotels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then I try and find them local stuff.
Right.
So we might be over at the Woodlands High School, or last year we were down in Spring Woods. And I think it was at Spring Woods when the kids were, can I have your jump drive? Can you
Flash
remind
drive,
me, you know, do you flash?
Yeah.
Because they loved it. They throw out these words like they've made them up.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we flash? I'm looking at it going, you know, if you want to share your cases ahead of time,
Right.
but at the end of the day, it's supposed to be about what you hear and what you
It's really,
respond to.
and that's what I meant at the very beginning when I talked about LD is morphing. You
Yeah.
know? Flashing was very common, and now it's the email chain.
Oh,
You know, and what's really weird is a lot of times the judge is also on the email chain.
right.
And that's not as weird as the fact that the kids already know his email address.
Yeah.
Because there's also a wiki where you can go and see what your judge is like.
Yeah.
And email might be on there. And
Yeah.
so they're emailing you as well, so you can see what they're running.
Right.
It's a different creature. When I walk in with my legal pad, they don't often know what to do. And they
I
just kinda
see,
go,
I'm the
I'm a
same
traditional,
thing.
this is the thing I have.
Yeah.
They've asked me before, do you want to be on the email chain? No, I do not. I'm going to listen to you. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
That's the way they do it too.
But it's really, you know, and that goes back to, again, the whole object is to persuade the person in the back of the room. So if you are at any school, 6A, 1A, wherever, and you're going to a lot of TFA tournaments, realize that when you get to TAPPS, you're going to be in the same room with these guys that didn't go to any tournaments. And so that might give you an advantage, but it also means you're going to have to adapt to the judge from that school in the back of the room and make sure you're persuasive. I've heard from a lot of coaches, I've judged at the national level, and I've had colleagues that have done that. It's really funny when you go in and you say, this is what I'm looking for, and both debaters get up and argue the same way they always do. Well, I have to pick a winner, but now I don't know what I'm going to pick on, and you're probably not going to like it. If the two guys at the front of the room are used to going back and forth as quickly as they can and doing all this weird stuff, and you say I'm a traditional judge, if your debater is the one that adapts, then your debater is going to be the one that wins. So I'm going to be the one that slows down, that explains it clearly, that is listening, taking notes because I know my judge wants me to do that. If you're not ready for it and your judge is like, I want tons of evidence, do what you can. Hopefully you've got some evidence and you know that maybe that judge is not going to worry as much about speaking style. Yes, ma'am.
So what material are they allowed to bring in with them?
Pretty much anything. We do allow computers. The computers are supposed to be in airport mode or offline.
Okay.
And again, that's kind of what we're talking about. Some of these other institutions are moving towards internet, but TAPPS has not, and I don't really predict it anytime soon.
And they can reference that while they're speaking?
They can absolutely reference it. They don't have to memorize anything.
Okay.
Right, they don't have to memorize anything. I would encourage the debaters to make sure they know their cases. The case is the first speech they're reading, because during those question periods, if I say, what was your second contention? What was your second point? And you're having to flip through the pages to find it, that's probably not a good idea. Come on in. So you want them to know it, but they don't have to, it's not like oratory where they have to have everything memorized in advance.
So they read their cases off their iPads.
Yeah. And I encourage, personally, I like to have it printed out still, but yeah, because the kids are like bending over the computers. I like it on paper, but a lot of them will read it off their computer. So, and it's allowed,
And then if their computers crash,
Then they're in trouble.
they're in.
And we have that issue, I will tell you, we have that issue every year. I would encourage all debaters, okay, if you want to read off the computer, you want to have the computer information, great. You better have a paper backup because your computer, technology, I'm convinced hates me, so I'm probably not the only one. Your computer will crash, and it might be at the worst time, so make sure that you've got paper backup. So, let's see. I think that it's, I should have gotten to this sooner, but I want to tell you that it's also important. I've been a member of the committee since we've started. As I mentioned, I was state director for a while. I very much believe in an open tab room, as does the rest of the committee. If you have questions at the state meet, I encourage you to come and find one of us and ask. If you want to see a ballot, the only time I'm going to say no is let me enter it first, or we just got it, or we don't have it yet, either one of those. But I mean, I'm going to, we want you to bring your concerns and questions to us if you have any. I would also encourage you to, if you're interested in serving on the committee, put your name forward at some point, because I like the idea of kind of moving it off. That's one of the reasons I decided not to be state director anymore, is I said, I've done it for 5 years, let somebody else have the fun. So, are there any concerns that you had from this past year? Those of you who did it. Yes, ma'am.
So I didn't do it this year,
Right.
sorry. But we did do some other stuff for the first year, and our concerns were the preparedness of the judges. And
Right.
earlier you mentioned, even though we've never done it before, we should sign up to judge.
Yes.
So where do we get our
Training, experience. That's the best place, really. Experience is going to be your best preparation. You can definitely do YouTube searches and see debates online. You can see, prose pieces online and stuff like that. And you can kind of manufacture that. I do that with some of our parents when we start a speech year, is I will have some judge training, which is simply I will show them some videos and then have them kind of rate them. But experience is going to be your best training.
Where's your school?
Houston Spring?
Oh, yeah, then they do a training in August.
Oh, awesome.
On Joy of Tournament, she calls she trains everything.
Yeah.
She trains speech, she trains debate.
This is in August?
Mhm. Mhm. And you can get your professional development hours.
Nice.
You get
Well, so
certificate.
for like the TAPPS state tournament.
Right.
I know that each school is supposed to bring a certain number of judges based on however many
Right.
entries you have.
Mhm.
How do they get trained?
I mean,
Like they're
I
judging.
don't really have an answer for you. Yeah, I mean, it really is just, you know, at the end of the day, judging speech, judging acting, judging debate, is you're sitting in the back room deciding which one was best. And that doesn't have to be as technical as you might think. You know, if I'm watching 6 proses, one of them moved me more than the others. That's the one I'm ranking first. One of them I really didn't like for whatever reason. That's the one I'm ranking last. That's the most important thing. And then just kind of putting on paper, what is it that you liked that you didn't like? And those ballots have questions that kind of lead you. What did you think about the selection? I thought the selection was fine. That's not what bothered me. You know, what did bother me? Oh, you played with your hair too much. There's a question on physical movement or posture or something like that. So I mean, you've got the paper training there. The key thing is knowing that a first place, it means that that's the best person in the room. A 6th place means that's the 6th person in the room. In debate, that you're circling the affirmative or negative. Which side did you believe convinced you? I mean, there's really experience is the best training.
Is there a place that we can access like the ballots so that we know what exactly the judges are looking
There is
for?
for speech. I don't know if we have a ballot online for debate, but for debate we've used the Joy of Tournaments ballots, which are very plain. It is literally the affirmative, the negative, just like listed for you, and then under that says comments and reasons for decision, and it's a big white space. So, and it's for debate. You're listening to the persuasiveness of the arguments. You're listening to their presentation, and did they use evidence? Did they need more evidence? You know, any kind of questions like that. I mean, that's just how did you feel the debate went?
Did you say the other ballots are online at the top?
The other ones are. I think it's on TAPPS. You can go in there and you can find sample ballots. It's I get lost sometimes. It's like forms somewhere in there. Yeah. And if you email me as well, I can kind of put you in contact with some of those.
Thank you.
I think we're running into my next sessions. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions at all, please email me. I'm at Holy Trinity Catholic High School in Temple. My email address is on there. And actually I wrote it down over here too if you want to snag it.